the rules just changed. Did anyone tell you? 11 of the 15 fastest growing economies in the entire world right now are African. China just told 53 African countries zero tariffs. Everything you sell us comes free. Meanwhile, the US is still out there renewing AGOA on a 3-year deal. 3 years, and somewhere in Limpopo, South Africa, a farmer just packed an avocado and shipped it to Shanghai. And that one fruit could change thousands of lives. Oh, and there is a $40 trillion market connecting Africa and the Caribbeans that almost nobody's talking about. Almost. Welcome to the Strategic Lens. Let's start with the first story. Okay, so the UN dropped a report. The African Development Bank dropped the report, and the IMF dropped the report. And you know what they all agreed on? Africa is growing faster than the rest of the world. Now, before you say, yeah, you've heard that before, let me give you the actual numbers, because the numbers are wild. The IMF projects Africa at 4.4% growth in 2026, Asia 4.1%, the global average around 2.7%. So let me put that differently. Sub-Saharan Africa is expected to grow faster than Asia for the first time in modern history. And it's not just one country dragging the average up. 21 African countries are projected to grow above 5% in 2025. 21. Ethiopia, Rwanda, Niger, Senegal, all hitting that 7% threshold. That's the number economists say you need for real poverty reduction, real structural change, and East Africa is leading, growing at 5.9% for 2025 into 2026, driven by Ethiopia, Rwanda, Tanzania, Kenya. And here is what the headlines always skip over. The reason this growth is happening is partly because Africa's exposure to the US tariff wars is limited. Why? Now, more on that in about 2 minutes, because China had something very specific to say about that. But I'm not going to let this be a victory lap, because there is a catch. Interest payments. Africa is spending 27.5% of government revenue just on debt interest payments. In 2019, that number was 19%. That means in some countries, more money is going to foreign creditors than it goes to schools, hospitals, and roads combined. Now, the growth is real, but so is the debt trap. And that matters because the question right now isn't whether Africa will grow. The question is who captures the value of that growth? African people or foreign creditors and multinational corporations? That's the tension we are going to keep coming back to today. So there is a town called Tanin in Limpopo, South Africa. You've probably never heard of it. But as of this year, avocado farmers, they are packing their fruit and shipping it all the way to Shanghai. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's just an avocado. But hear me out, because this avocado is actually a geopolitical story disguised as a fruit. So South Africa grows about 160,000 tons of avocado a year. Roughly 80,000 tons get exported, and for years about 95% of those exports went to Europe, UK and Russia. But Europe's market is mature, prices are capped, and Russia, well, you know. So South Africa spends years negotiating with the Chinese government to have access to the Chinese avocado market. A phytosanitary agreement was finally signed in August 2023. The first shipment, just 21 tons, arrived in Shanghai in October 2024. Then in May 2025, ZZ2, one of South Africa's biggest fruit companies, sent the first shipment of the 2025 season to China. 100 tons exported so far. Now that's tiny, but the direction of travel is massive. Now here is why this matters beyond the avocado. China imports about 66,000 tons of avocado a year, and it's growing fast. Demand is rising as Chinese middle-class consumers discover the health benefits. And here is South Africa's strategic advantage: shorter shipping time than competitors like Peru or Chile. That means fresher fruit, and in the quality sensitive market like China, freshness equals premium pricing. Now, if this market develops the way analysts expect, we are talking about an employment boom in some of South Africa's most economically disadvantaged rural communities. In Limpopo, Mpumalanga, KwaZulu-Natal, in areas that desperately need it. And then there is the zero tariff angle. China currently charges 7% import duty on avocados, but something is about to change on May 1st that makes the story even bigger. I will get to that in exactly 60 seconds. Stick with me. Okay, here is the big one. During the recent AU summit, China reaffirmed its commitment to zero tariff access for 53 African countries. Every African country that recognizes Beijing diplomatically, that's 53 or 54. Every product, zero tariff, nada, going into effect May 1st, 2026. That's in months. Now let me give you the context. For years, China had zero tariffs on goods from Africa's least developed countries. Then in 2024, they expanded it to all products from those countries. And now they have opened it up to the whole continent. Now, this is not small. Economists are estimating China is losing about $1.4 billion in tariff revenue per year to make this possible. But before we pop the champagne, let me give you the receipts. Because this deal has a shadow side the headlines aren't telling you. Here are the raw numbers from China's own custom data. January to August 2025, China-Africa trade hit $222 billion. That sounds great, right? But look at how that breaks down. China exported $140 billion to Africa. Africa exported $81 billion to China. That's a trade deficit of $59.5 billion for Africa. And in 2025 full year, that deficit widens to $102 billion, a 64.5% increase. So China is saying, send us more stuff for free. But what Africa is currently sending? Mostly crude oil, copper, cobalt, iron ore, raw materials. And what's China sending back? Machinery, electronics, manufactured goods, higher value, higher margin. And this is the classic colonial trade trap, just with different players. So here is the question I want you to sit with, and I mean sit with. Is zero tariff access a gift, or is it a longer leash on the same chain? You see, if African countries are only exporting raw materials, removing tariffs only makes it cheaper and easier for China to access those raw materials. The value, the jobs, the manufacturing, the processing still happens in China. So the zero tariff deal only becomes truly powerful if African governments use it to export processed goods, value-added products, chocolate instead of cocoa, copper wire instead of copper ore, avocado oil instead of raw avocados. And that's where the avocado story connects back. Meanwhile, on the other side of the Atlantic, the United States, the United States AGOA, the African Growth and Opportunity Act, expired on September 30th, 2025. Gone. After 25 years of providing duty-free access to the US market for over 30 African nations, just expired. Now, this placed about 1.3 million jobs at risk. Now, there was a mad scramble, and eventually, January 2026, Congress voted 340 to 54 to renew it. Trump signed it in February for 3 years. 3 years. Now, previous renewals were 10 years. The one before that, also 10 years. Now, just 3 years of we will see how you behave. You see, the optics are not great. And here is what you need to understand about why this timing matters. China made zero tariff access permanent, or at least permanent until they decide otherwise. No governance conditions, no human rights benchmarks, no renewal anxiety every few years. AGOA says, do what we say or we take it back. China says, we are not asking for anything in return. Now, smart African leaders know both of these are transactional. China is not Africa's savior. The US is not Africa's oppressor. These are major powers using trade access as soft power. But from a negotiating position, Africa now has options, real leverage, and that's actually new. Now, while everyone has been watching China and the US go back and forth, Africa and the Caribbean are quietly building something. The Afri-Caribbean Investment Summit, ASIS 26, drops March 23rd to 28 in Abuja. The pitch, a combined $40 trillion market across Africa, the Caribbean, and the Americas. Now, that's a combined GDP across all those nations, not a pot of cash, but the untapped opportunity between these two regions. That part is very real and very unexplored. Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados, Grenada, these aren't random islands. These are African diaspora nations, same DNA, same cuisine, same resilience. But for centuries, a Nigerian businessman wanting to meet a Jamaican counterpart had to route through London or Paris first. Colonial infrastructure literally forced black peoples to speak to each other through European middlemen. That's changing. The 2025 inaugural summit focused on St. Kitts and Nevis already delivered a $40 million deep water port deal. MOUs signed in agriculture and cultural exchange. Nigerian businesses sold out at the exhibition, and Air Peace launched the first ever direct flight from Nigeria to St. Kitts. 120 people on the plane. No London layover, no Paris transit. Just Africa to the Caribbean direct. That flight is the metaphor. New infrastructure built by us, for us. If you are in the diaspora, African, Caribbean, Black in America or Europe, do you know this is happening? The investment funds in Singapore know. The advisors in Zurich know. The only people sleeping on it are the ones who should benefit most. Is that going to change? Okay, let's zoom out and connect what we just saw today, because these four stories aren't separate. They are chapters of the same book. Chapter 1, Africa is growing faster than the world. The numbers are real, but the debt burden is real too. Chapter 2, a South African farmer packs an avocado and ships it to Shanghai. It sounds small, but it's a preview of what happens when African countries start exporting finished products to new markets. Chapter 3, China opens the door. Zero tariffs for 53 African nations. The US keeps the door open with a shorter lease. Africa now has leverage. The question is whether African governments are strategic enough to see it, or whether we keep exporting raw materials and wondering why the wealth doesn't stay home. Chapter 4: Africa and the Caribbean. 1.4 billion people connected by history, culture, DNA are starting to do business directly for the first time in centuries. And it's not being covered like it should be. The theme today was power shifting, but here is the more precise question. Power is available. Is Africa, are Africans in the diaspora ready to take it? Because markets don't wait. Capital doesn't wait. History doesn't wait. The avocado ships to China with or without us. The Caribbean markets open with or without our investments. The debt clock keeps ticking. The only variable is us. Here's what I keep coming back to. Africa doesn't have a resource problem. The resources are legendary. Africa doesn't have a talent problem. Walk through any major city on this continent, you will find brilliance. Africa has a leverage problem, a terms of trade problem, a who captures the value problem. And the most dangerous thing right now isn't Western sanctions or Chinese debt traps or AGOA expiring. The most dangerous thing is Africans and African diaspora being spectators to their own economic revolution. China is moving, the Caribbean is moving, the numbers are moving. You should be moving too. Whether that is learning about these markets, investing where you can, making noise where your voice reaches. The point is this: the map is being drawn right now, and the people drawing it are the people paying attention. So the $1 million question isn't whether Africa will grow. The question is, who benefits when it does? See you in my next video. If you haven't joined a membership, I don't know what you're waiting for. The links for resources that we used to make this video are in our membership, both Patreon and YouTube membership. They include angles we didn't touch in this video. See you in my next video. Bye.